I never should have come to this party. That thought kept running through my mind as I sat in the corner of Mark's living room, nursing a half-empty cup of soda and wishing I could disappear into the wallpaper. The music was too loud, the room too crowded, and everyone around me seemed way too invested in making this night epic. I'd been dragged here by my best friend, Hannah, who'd sworn it would be good for me to get out for once. Right now, I was seriously questioning our friendship. "Come on, Damien, live a little," she had said, practically shoving me through the front door. Big mistake. I wasn't exactly a social butterfly, and parties like this weren't my scene. But here I was, awkwardly perched on the edge of the couch, watching a group of seniors gather in a circle for what had to be the most cliched party game ever. Truth or dare. "Damien, you should join us," someone called out, probably thinking they were being friendly. I shook my head, hoping they'd get the hint and move on. No such luck. "Don't be a buzzkill, man," Mark said, grinning as he grabbed my arm and tugged me into the circle. Great, now I was stuck. I sat there, trying to stay invisible as the game went on. Truth or dare wasn't exactly rocket science. Someone picks truth, they answer some embarrassing question. Someone picks dare, they do something equally ridiculous. Harmless enough, right? Wrong. Everything was going fine until it was Connor's turn. He was sitting directly across from me, looking as cocky as ever with that stupid lopsided grin of his. The kind of grin that said he was up to no good. "Dare," he said confidently, leaning back against the couch. Mark's eyes lit up like Christmas lights. "I dare you to kiss Damien." Time stopped. My heart plummeted into my stomach as a wave of shock rippled through the group. Nervous laughter broke out, and I could feel every pair of eyes suddenly fixed on me. My face burned as I looked down at the floor, praying it would swallow me whole. "What?" Connor raised an eyebrow, like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. "You heard me," Mark said, clearly enjoying himself. "Kiss Damien, unless you're too chicken." Connor's gaze flicked over to me, and for a moment, I thought he might actually say no. But then, with a shrug and that infuriating grin still plastered on his face, he got up and walked over to where I was sitting. "Don't," I mumbled under my breath, my voice barely audible over the pounding music. But he didn't stop. Before I could react, Connor leaned down and pressed his lips to mine. It was quick, barely more than a peck, but it was enough to send the whole room into an uproar. I froze. My mind went blank. And when he finally pulled back, all I could do was sit there, stunned and humiliated. "There, dare complete," Connor said, smirking as he returned to his spot in the circle. The laughter and teasing around us blurred into background noise as I stood up, my hands clenched into fists at my side. Without a word, I pushed my way through the crowd and headed for the front door. I needed to get out of there fast. A few minutes later, I didn't stop running until I was well down the street, away from the pounding music and laughter that still rang in my ears. My heart was racing. My face burned with embarrassment. I could barely see straight as I stumbled toward my dorm, too angry to care if anyone saw me. How could he do that? I thought, biting down hard on my lip as I tried to steady my breath. Connor, of all people. The guy who'd spent years making my life miserable, who never missed a chance to tease me or humiliate me in front of everyone. And now he'd stolen my first kiss? Just like that? I slammed my dorm door shut behind me and leaned against it, eyes squeezed shut. My mind wouldn't stop racing. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. My first kiss was supposed to mean something. I didn't care if it was cliche or cheesy or whatever. I just didn't want it to be some stupid dare at a party, with him of all people. I sank down onto my bed, rubbing my hands over my face. Memories of every snide remark, every shove in the hallway, and every mocking grin Connor had ever thrown my way flooded back. He'd been the bane of my existence for years, and now he'd managed to ruin something as personal as my first kiss. I let out a bitter laugh, though there was nothing funny about any of it. Enough was enough. I wasn't going to let him mess with my head anymore. From now on, I'd steer as clear of Connor as possible. No more parties, no more awkward run-ins, no more giving him the chance to get under my skin. Simple, easy, or at least it should be. 1 week later. I'm pretty sure now even the heavens have a personal grudge against me. Somehow I'd managed to stay away from Connor for almost a week. I hadn't seen him in the halls, hadn't heard him laughing with his friends, nothing. It was like he'd vanished, and honestly, I was relieved. If I could go the rest of my life without running into him, I'd be perfectly fine. But, of course, life couldn't let me have that small victory. Nope, that would be too easy. It happened during lunch. I was minding my own business, sketching random doodles in my notebook, when Professor Hale walked over with this huge, way too friendly smile. "Damien, just the person I was looking for," she said, sounding way too cheerful for my liking. I blinked up at her, already feeling uneasy. Okay. "You've been assigned to help organize prom. We're really counting on you to make it a success." Wait, what? Prom duty? I didn't sign up for this. I opened my mouth to argue, but she kept going. "Oh, and Connor's your partner. He already knows, so you can contact him directly. You two will make a great team." Great team? Connor? I stared after her as she walked away, my brain stuck on repeat. What the hell? Out of everyone, it had to be him. Again. The next day. I was putting up flyers for prom around the school when Connor strolled up, hands in his pockets, that stupid grin on his face. I ignored him and focused on taping the flyers straight. "Need help, partner?" he asked, leaning casually against the wall. "Nope," I said flatly, pressing the tape down harder than necessary. "You sure? I'm pretty tall. Might make things easier." I shot him a glare. "I'd rather climb a ladder made of nails than get help from you." Connor chuckled, clearly enjoying himself. "Ouch!" He tapped his chest dramatically like I'd hurt his heart or something. I rolled my eyes. "You'll survive." He didn't leave. Instead, he stood there watching me work. After a minute, I couldn't take it anymore. "Do you ever stop hovering?" "Not when the view's this good," he said, winking. My face heated up. I hated that he could do that. Fluster me with one dumb comment. "Go away, Connor." "Can't. We have prom planning to do, remember?" he said, smirking as he finally walked off. I sighed. 2 months. Just about 2 months, and I'd be done with him forever. 3 days later. We were sorting decorations in the gym, and naturally, Connor was being as helpful as a broken compass. "Pass me the red streamers," I said, holding out my hand. Connor tossed a roll of green streamers at me instead. I caught it and glared at him. "Are you colorblind or just annoying?" "Maybe both," he said with a shrug, that grin never leaving his face. "But you love it." I groaned. "I literally can't stand you." "And yet, here you are, spending all this quality time with me," he said, stepping closer. Too close. "Admit it, Damien, you'd miss me if I wasn't around." "Miss you? The only thing I'd miss is the peace and quiet." I shot back, turning away to hide the fact that he was starting to get under my skin. Again. He laughed softly, the sound surprisingly nice. I hated that too. "You know," he said after a moment, "I could get used to this." "Used to what, annoying me for fun?" "No," he said, and for once he wasn't smirking. "Spending time with you." I blinked, caught off guard by his sudden seriousness. Before I could figure out what to say, he grabbed the box of streamers and walked off, leaving me standing there, confused and more flustered than I wanted to admit. Over a week later. We were in the gym again, setting up tables for prom. I was busy arranging centerpieces when I heard a loud thud behind me. Turning around, I saw Connor clutching his hand, a wince on his face. "What happened?" I asked, walking over. "Hit my hand on the edge of the table," he muttered, trying to shake it off. "Let me see." Before he could argue, I grabbed his hand and looked it over. His knuckles were red and starting to swell. Without thinking, I pulled out a cold pack from my bag. "Here, press this on it," I said, handing it to him. He did as I said, but his usual grin was nowhere in sight. "This reminds me of middle school," I said, not looking at him. "When you knocked me over during dodgeball, I landed on my hand, and it swelled up just like this." Connor froze, his eyes dropping to the coal pack. "Yeah, I remember that," he said quietly. "I was such a jerk back then. I'm sorry, Damien." I blinked, caught off guard by how genuine he sounded. Connor apologizing? I didn't know what to say or how to feel. "It's fine," I mumbled, still processing. It wasn't fine, but somehow hearing him say sorry made it a little easier to let go. 2 days later. Since that weird moment with Connor's apology, things between us had shifted. There was this strange kind of peace, like we'd silently agreed to stop pushing each other's buttons so much. We were hanging banners in the gym, and for once, it wasn't completely unbearable. Connor actually helped without turning it into a game of let's annoy Damien. "You got paint on your face," Connor said, pointing to my cheek. "No, I don't," I said, brushing my hand over it. "Yeah, you do." He stepped closer. Way too close. And before I could react, he wiped it off with his thumb. My breath caught. His hand lingered a second too long before he pulled away, smirking. "There, all clean." I turned back to the banner, my heart pounding for reasons I didn't want to think about. What the hell was happening? He wasn't supposed to be this nice, thoughtful. Definitely not someone who made my chest feel weird whenever he smiled at me. 5 days later. We were finalizing some of the prom details when Connor leaned over, his shoulder brushing mine. The contact was brief, but it sent a spark through me that I tried and failed to ignore. "Do you think we should add more lights?" he asked, his voice low, almost like we were sharing some secret. Yeah, sure," I mumbled, hoping he couldn't hear the way my heart was suddenly racing. I kept my eyes on the list, but I could feel him watching me, like he always did lately. "You've got really neat handwriting," he said after a moment, his tone lighter but still carrying that strange warmth. "Didn't know you were so precise." "You didn't know anything about me," I said quietly, glancing at him. Big mistake. His eyes caught mine, and for a second, everything else blurred out. "I'm trying to change that," he said, his voice softer, more serious. It was something in the way he looked at me, like I wasn't just some guy he used to mess with. Like I was important. It made my stomach flip in a way that left me completely off balance. I turned back to the list, hoping he couldn't see how flustered I was. What was happening to me? Falling for Connor wasn't supposed to be an option, but standing this close to him, I wasn't sure I had a choice anymore. 2 days later. We were cleaning up after a late meeting, the gym quiet except for the sound of chairs scraping the floor. Connor was unusually quiet, not his typical smug, teasing self. I glanced at him, expecting some dumb comment, but instead he was looking at me with that strange, unreadable expression. "What?" I asked, feeling uneasy under his gaze. "Nothing," he said, but his voice was softer, almost hesitant. He walked over and stood beside me, too close, like always. "You know, I used to think you were just this quiet, serious guy who didn't want anything to do with people like me." I frowned. "People like you?" "Yeah, the popular jerk who didn't know how to deal with his own feelings, so he acted out." He paused, then added quietly, "You made me realize how stupid I was." I didn't know how to respond. There was something in his tone, something raw, vulnerable, that caught me completely off guard. Before I could say anything, he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Anyways, thanks for sticking around." Then he turned to leave me standing there, heart pounding, more confused than ever. It happened after another one of those moments. Too close, too intense. I couldn't take it anymore. "Stop," I blurted, stepping back. "Stop acting like this, flirting with me like it's some kind of game." Connor looked stunned for a second, then his expression softened. "But I'm not acting." His voice was low, steady. "I really like you, Damien." My breath hitched. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. All I could do was stare at him, heart pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "But you were my bully," I said weakly. "You made my life hell." Connor stepped closer, his hand lifting to touch my cheek gently. His touch was warm, grounding, but it only made the chaos in my mind worse. "I'm reminded of that every day," he said softly, "and every day I suffer for it. I can't change what I did. I was a stupid jerk kid with my own issues, but I can try to make it up to you, if you give me a chance." I swallowed hard, my chest tight with emotions I didn't understand. "Connor, tell me, Damien, would you give me a chance to make it up to you?" His voice was barely a whisper, but it was enough to shake me. I don't know." My voice broke as I turned and ran, unable to face him or myself any longer. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. No matter how much I tossed and turned, Connor's words kept replaying in my head. I really like you, Damien. Why did he have to say that? Why now after everything? He was my bully. The guy who made middle school and half of high school miserable for me. And yet, he wasn't that guy anymore. I could see it in the way he looked at me, in the way he acted around me. He wasn't playing games. He was serious. And that scared me. Because if I was honest, I didn't hate him anymore. Somewhere along the way, things had changed. I didn't know what I wanted, but the thought of giving Connor a chance didn't feel so impossible. It felt terrifying. The next day, we met at a small cafe to go over the remaining prom preparations. I was determined not to think about last night, not to let it affect me. We both seemed to silently agree not to bring it up, which worked for about 5 minutes before the tension made it almost unbearable. Connor was his usual self, calm, collected, throwing out ideas while I scribbled notes. But all I could do was focus on how close he was sitting to me and how his voice has the same softness from yesterday. My mind was a mess, replaying his confession over and over. I don't know what came over me, but suddenly, before I could overthink it, I leaned forward and kissed him. Just like that. A quick, sudden kiss that left both of us stunned. Guess we're sorta even now, I said, trying to act casual, though my heart was racing. Connor blinked, clearly in shock. Wait, does that mean? I gave a small, hesitant nod, my cheeks burning. Yeah, but you better make it up to me. Good. His face broke into the biggest grin I'd ever seen, and before I could react, he kissed me back. Slow, warm, and real. And for the first time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we were starting something new. A week later. It became a thing for us, morning walks before school. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who actually enjoyed waking up early, but with Connor, it was different. We'd meet up at the park near my house, him always grinning like he'd been waiting forever, even if I was only a minute late. You're always so serious, he teased one morning, bumping my shoulder lightly as we walked along the path. And you're always so annoying, I shot back, but I couldn't help smiling. We stopped by the little bridge overlooking the stream, and Connor slipped his hand into mine. It was a simple gesture, but it made my chest feel light, warm, happy. I like this, I admitted quietly. He glanced at me, his green eyes soft. Yeah? Good, because I'm not letting you go. I laughed, feeling more at peace than I had in years. Things weren't perfect, we still had our differences, our past, but for the first time, I believed we were something real, something strong. 2 days later. Study dates became our excuse to spend more time together. We'd sit in the library pretending to focus on homework while sneaking glances at each other. You're supposed to be solving that equation, Connor said, leaning closer, his voice playful. And you're supposed to stop distracting me, I shot back, nudging him. He smirked, leaning in until his face was inches from mine. Can't help it, you're cute when you're concentrating. My heart skipped a beat, but I rolled my eyes. Flatter me all you want. You're still solving the next problem. Connor laughed but didn't argue. Moments like these made me realize how much we'd changed, how far we'd come. I wasn't just happy, I was content. For the first time, I believed we were solid. No games, no confusion, just us, figuring things out together. And it felt good, really good. 3 days later. The prom preparations were almost done, and I could feel the tension building. But honestly, it wasn't about the prom anymore. It was about us, spending time together, figuring out this weird new thing between us. I found myself looking for Connor more and more. I was heading towards the gym when I overheard him talking to Mark by the lockers. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but the words hit me hard. I've applied to that prestigious university out of state, Connor was saying, his voice a little too casual. I'm pretty sure I'll get in. It's a done deal. My heart sank. Part of me knew this was coming, but hearing him say it made it feel real. He was planning to leave, for good. I turned away before he could see me, my stomach twisted in knots. I couldn't shake the feeling that our connection wasn't as deep for him as it was for me. If he was already planning to go to college far away, then what did we even have? I tried to ignore the hurt building inside me, but it was impossible. Maybe I'd been fooling myself all along. I couldn't let myself get too attached, especially if he was just going to leave. For over a week, I'd been ignoring Connor. He tried to reach out, texting, calling, even showing up at my door, but I wouldn't respond. I didn't know what to say, and honestly, I was still confused about everything. But tonight, I finally decided to get some air. The weight on my chest felt too heavy, and I needed to clear my head. I wasn't expecting to find him standing outside the park, waiting for me. He looked up when I walked by, his expression soft but serious. "Damien," he said, his voice steady but filled with something else. I stopped in my tracks, my heart skipping a beat. "What do you want, Connor?" He didn't beat around the bush. "What's going on? Why have you been avoiding me?" I wanted to say nothing, but the frustration bubbled up. "It's nothing," I muttered, trying to brush it off. He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. "It's not nothing, tell me." I couldn't hold it in anymore. "Why should I get attached to someone who's just going to leave anyway?" I blurted out. "I overheard you talking about that university you're going to. You're not staying here. You'll leave, just like everyone else always does." To my surprise, Connor wrapped his arms around me. "Silly, it was your dream university. You always talked about how you'd go there, and you're so smart. Of course you'd get in. That's why I had been working so hard to get in there. Otherwise, there's no way a guy like me could get in." I was shocked. "So, you don't want to leave?" He chuckled softly. "Where would I go without you?" Tears started to well up in my eyes. I thought you'd leave me behind. Besides, I dropped the idea of going there way ago because I know you wouldn't." Connor laughed again, a bit more confidently. "We're a pair of silly idiots, aren't we?" And I smiled through my tears, feeling lighter than I had in days. "Yeah," I whispered. "Sillies in love." We hugged tightly, both of us knowing finally that we weren't going anywhere. Prom night came, and there I was, standing with Connor in the middle of the dance floor. He was holding me close, and everything else faded into the background. It felt like a dream, just us swaying together under the soft lights. His hands on my back, my head resting against his chest. It was magical. I never imagined that this, us, could happen, but it was real, and it felt right. Later that night, when everything was quieter and we were alone, it happened. Just like my first kiss, Connor stole my virginity too. It wasn't rushed, but soft, gentle, and full of the same warmth that had been growing between us for weeks. And somehow, despite everything, I knew we were exactly where we were meant to be. The end. Have you ever been in love with your bully? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.